If you were going to tell me at the start of the season that a McLaren is going to beat a Red Bull by 20 plus seconds, that too at Max's home race, I would say you are crazy. But that's where we are now, halfway through the season. Red Bull is seriously in trouble, and somewhere in England there is a man who's smiling and saying, I told you so. Let's unpack the Dutch Grand Prix. So let's talk about the race start first, and what a lap by Norris in qualifying. He was in P1, Max in P2, and there were already all the memes online how Norris is gonna bottle his start and Max is gonna lead into turn 1. That's what exactly happened. Norris once again bottled the start, but I don't think you can blame this one on him because there was something wrong with the car. Norris and Oscar, both of them were struggled at the start. There was a lot of wheel spin. Basically, your rear wheels are moving a bit too quickly and it's difficult to control and you're unable to put the power down. That's what wheel spin is, and both of them suffered with it and they had to lose positions. Yeah, because of this, Max ended up in the lead of the race and immediately he was able to put some gap down on Lando, and everybody thought this is once again going to be another easy win for Max, 4 in a row at his home race. But remember in the previous race reviews where I've told you that the tires come later to the McLaren, they light up their tires after a certain couple of laps. Well, that's what exactly happened, because in a couple of laps you could see Verstappen struggling with tire grip and Norris just zoomed by, and from that part till the end of the race he was comfortably in the lead without any challenge. In fact, so much so that he ended up putting 20 plus seconds. It was a perfect drive by Norris, and one surprise that he kept right until the last lap of the race was that he even went ahead and got the fastest lap on very old set of hard tires. So that just tells you how good the McLaren can handle the tires, that they still had pace in them after so many laps, and he grabbed that one extra championship point. He's gonna need every single one of them if he wants to close that 70-point gap in the Drivers' Championship in the next 9 races. I was also a bit disappointed with how Oscar's weekend went. I mean, he was in P3, not a great lap in comparison to Lando, but he was in a good position for the race, but then at the race start he ended up losing positions, and then he was just in dirty air trying to overtake other people. He tried to make some moves after the pit stop, but still it was not enough to overtake Leclerc. He was constantly behind him in DRS and he just couldn't make a mark in this race. So I hope that he improves his performance. His strategy was also not very ideal, and I think that everyone was actually caught by surprise with Ferrari's pace because nobody expected them to be this good. They were not the fastest car, of course, but considering how their qualifying went, their race pace was much better. Even the drivers were scratching their heads thinking where this pace has come from, and Leclerc was clearly saying that we needed a miracle to be on the podium. So from that point to having such a great race, Sainz started way back in P10, and actually the reason that he didn't have a great qualifying, probably first of all the car was not that great in quali, and a second reason was that Sainz barely had any running on the soft tire. Throughout FP2 where everybody were doing their quali sims, he was not able to take part. So that's why his running was a bit compromised, but he still had a great recovery. To finish in P5 is really awesome compared to where he started. It was kind of a perfect weekend for Ferrari because both of the drivers drove really well. They maximized the package, the strategy was really good, the pit stops were great, and they still have issues with their car, but there are upgrades coming in the next 2 races, especially in Monza, to fix these problems. Their major problem right now is bouncing in the high speed corners. They need to fix that, and Monza is a very high speed track. It's Ferrari's home ground, so clearly they would want to not mess up there. And talking about a team that did not maximize their package, we have Mercedes. So these Pirelli tires that everybody is using are actually very sensitive to setup and temperature changes. Even 1 degree here or there can completely mess up your pace if your car is not in the right setup window. Ferrari also has a similar problem, and so does Mercedes, and that is what was biting them this weekend. So initially you saw that Lewis Hamilton was one of the fastest in Q1 and nobody was beating his time, and everybody had to use another set of fresh soft tires to eventually beat his time with track evolution. Russell was nowhere in Q1, and then suddenly you jump to Q2 and everything changed. Russell was much faster, Hamilton was not able to keep up, to the point that he got eliminated, and because he impeded Perez, he also got a 3-place penalty. But then come the race time, everything was upside down. Russell had no pace at all in the race. It was just a very average race from him. He had a good start, but the car just couldn't keep up with everyone around, whereas Lewis Hamilton was cutting through the traffic and making a lot of moves to the point where both of them finished P7 and P8. Hamilton did go for a slightly higher downforce setup, so maybe that's why it was easier on his tires and he was able to have a better race, because Russell had a lot of tire degradation. His car was not set up properly, and that's why actually Mercedes pitted him And that's why actually Mercedes pitted him for the soft tires. Everybody was confused, including me, that why are they doing this? It makes no sense. You're giving up 2 positions. But later on, after the race, Mercedes said that if they would not have pitted him, Sainz was already going to overtake him. Perez and Hamilton also would have probably overtook him. So yeah, this was completely a weekend to forget for them. And probably for Red Bull too. So let me first explain what's happening with Red Bull. So the thing is, for the Dutch Grand Prix, they were running a mix and match of old parts and new parts. Both Perez and Max had different components on their cars. Max had the old floor from Bahrain. Yes, the one that they started this season with. Perez had slightly new components, and Max also ran a very different setup. They just wanted to understand what's working and what not. And by the end of the race, they ended up realizing that the old floor was costing Max at least 2/10 in the race, and they went with a much higher downforce setup on Max's car that was completely ruining his pace as well. I mean, his tires were nowhere, his pace was nowhere. He was just sort of sitting in no man's land after Norris overtook him. And the fact that Norris ended up putting more than 20 plus seconds between him and Max just tells you how terrible Max's setup and his car was. Because even if you see Max and Checo, I guess throughout the last 1.5 to 2 years, Checo has not really been faster than Max within the race. This time, Checo was faster than Max in the last stint on the hard tires. So the team currently is really confused as to what is wrong with their car, and they're going to take a while to fix it. You know, last year Aston Martin was kind of going back with upgrades. Even this year earlier, they were doing that. You could say something similar has happened with Red Bull. Now they have parts coming in, but if McLaren keeps on improving this way, it's going to be very tough for Red Bull to catch up. I think that Constructors' title is definitely going from them this year, and McLaren is going to lead after the next 1 or 2 races. And now I sort of understand why Red Bull probably didn't do a random driver change, because right now the car is only not in the right place. They need to fix that. Fixing their second driver is another problem that they can deal with later on. I also want to give credit to Nico Hülkenberg. I mean, that guy drove an amazing race. He was almost in the points until Alonso and Gasly overtook him, and that was because he drove 57 laps on the hard tire. And his car also had some issues. He had brake issues throughout the weekend, and still to be able to do that, that was really, really cool. And I also like this really cool shot of 5 cars. You can see here. That was so epic. And then Albon somehow started complaining that, man, that's so dangerous. That team is in a bit of trouble. They did end up getting Carlos for the next year, which is really great for Williams, not so great for Carlos. But the problem is they're already looking to replace Logan from the next race because of the horrible crash that he caused for no reason. The team, the engineers, the mechanics work hard to bring in the upgrades. You put them on the car and your driver just bins it out of nowhere, and you could see everybody's faces. Because the thing is, for teams like Williams, they would want to invest a lot of their money of the cost cap on car development, testing parts and so on. But if your driver keeps crashing the car, then a lot of money is allocated there. So you cannot invest that money into developing your car. So that's why from the next race, they're already looking for a replacement. Mick Schumacher is being considered for the next 9 races in the Williams. They're also considering Liam Lawson. So let's see what happens. And apart from that, there is not much to talk about the other teams. Racing Bulls or Visa Cash App RB didn't have that great of a pace. They somehow decide to mess up one driver strategy. Last time it was Daniel Ricciardo. This time it was Yuki Tsunoda. And I don't know why Kick Sauber even shows up when they always want to be 19 and 20. So yeah, that was your Dutch Grand Prix. And I want to know from you guys, do you guys really think that Norris can close that 70-point gap in the next 9 races? He has to show a level of form and momentum that he's never shown in his career. He needs to win 9 races straight, win all of the sprint races, get all of the fastest lap points. I don't know, it's a tough challenge, but if he manages to do it, what a great way to shut all of the haters. I would like to know your opinion on who's going to win the Drivers' Championship. I think the Constructors' Championship is sealed. McLaren is going to get it. And I'm quite excited for the Italian Grand Prix. Ferrari's home ground, they're bringing upgrades. I want to see what Red Bull does, because the way Monza is laid out, Red Bull is still good in the high-speed stuff. I want to see what McLaren does, what Mercedes does. It's going to be really exciting. Mercedes is probably going to announce Kimi Antonelli as the driver who's going to join them in 2025. He's also going to drive the car in the practice session. And I also want to see what Williams does. Do they actually switch to another driver midway through the season? A lot of things to unpack, and Monza is always fun. So let me know, what do you guys think is going to happen in the race. For now, thanks for watching the Dutch Grand Prix review. Let me know your thoughts about the race, your predictions, your theories in the comments, and I'll catch up with you guys in the next one. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at your F1 guy for all of the F1 updates, and subscribe to this channel. Let's get to 10,000 before this season ends.